Ivan and Amina made a bold choice not to pay attention to the whispers behind their backs and the sidelong glances of the residents of the town. Ever since they decided to focus only on their feelings, their relationship began to blossom. Every day brought something new, and their bond grew stronger. At first, Ivan felt awkward because of the age difference and cultural differences.
If you fell in love with a man old enough to be your grandfather, or a girl 50 years younger, would you follow your heart or give in to people's opinions and standards? Drop your comments, and don't forget to like and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is.
Ivan lived in a small town far away from the hustle and bustle of the big cities. He was already 70 years old, and his life flowed smoothly and quietly. After the death of his wife 5 years ago, he finally withdrew into himself, becoming a lonely old man who rarely left the house, unless it was necessary to buy groceries or medicine. His days passed alone, and he felt more and more like life was gradually leaving him. The town where Ivan lived was small, with a population of no more than 1,000 people. Most of its inhabitants were elderly people, and young people had long ago left to study or work in large cities. People here knew each other, and any event quickly became a subject of discussion. So when a young African girl appeared in the town, it did not go unnoticed. Her name was Amina, and she had come here to study at the local university, which, despite its modesty, offered unique programs that attracted students from all over the world. Amina was different from the rest of the residents, not only because of her skin color, but also because of the vibrancy and energy she literally radiated. She could always be seen on the street, either in conversation with locals or reading a book in a small park. She quickly became a prominent figure in this quiet corner of the world, and many of the locals, who at first were wary of her, soon became accustomed to her presence. Ivan first saw Amina when he was on his way to the local store to buy groceries. It was an ordinary day for him, and, as always, he walked at a leisurely pace through the narrow streets of the town. The store was in the center, on the main street, and at this time of day, it was usually quite crowded. Ivan didn't like crowds, so he tried to do his shopping as quickly as possible and go home. As Ivan walked out of the store with 2 heavy bags in his hands, he felt his legs start to shake. He was no longer as strong as he used to be, and often found it difficult to do the simplest everyday tasks. This time it seemed to him that he would not be able to carry his purchases home. Amina at this time also came out of the store. She noticed Ivan and saw how hard it was for him to walk with his bags. Without hesitation, she approached him and offered her help.
"Excuse me, can I help you?"
she asked in a soft voice, leaning slightly toward him. Ivan raised his head and met her eyes. He hadn't expected such an offer, and at first he didn't even understand what she said. Her accent, though light, still gave away the foreigner, and Ivan hesitated for a moment.
"Shall I help you carry the bags?"
Amina repeated, seeing his confusion. Ivan hesitated, but nodded.
"Yes, if it's not too much trouble,"
he answered quietly, handing her one of the bags.
"Of course, it's not difficult."
She smiled, accepting the package.
"Where do you need to go?"
"Just a couple blocks from here."
Ivan pointed toward his street.
"Thank you. D."
They walked together through the narrow streets, and Ivan noticed how easily and casually Amina carried the heavy bag. He felt a little embarrassed, but at the same time he was pleased that someone had decided to help him.
"My name is Amina,"
she said, breaking the silence.
"I've recently moved here to study. And you must be a local?"
"Yes, my name is Ivan.
He answered, smiling slightly.
I've been living here for many years. It's a small town. Everyone knows each other."
"It's so cozy."
Amina said warmly.
"I like it here very much, although it was a little lonely at first. There aren't many people my age here."
"That's true.
Ivan agreed.
It's mostly old people here, and the young people have moved away."
Amina nodded, and for a while they walked in silence. It was a little unusual for Ivan to talk to such a young and energetic girl. His mind flashed with thoughts of how different they were, he an old man who had lived a long and difficult life, and she young, full of hopes and dreams. But at the same time he felt that Amina had offered to help him for a reason. There was a special kindness in her eyes that penetrated into his heart.
"What are you studying?"
Ivan finally asked, trying to keep the conversation going.
I am studying art history.
Amina answered with enthusiasm.
There is a wonderful professor here whom I really wanted to listen to. He is a real expert in his field.
Ivan nodded, saying goodbye to her. He stood at the threshold of his house and watched Amina walk away down the street, walking lightly and gracefully, as if nature itself favored her. Her figure gradually disappeared from sight, but a slight sadness remained in Ivan's soul. This short conversation reminded him of how little joy there had been in his life in recent years, how he had withdrawn into his loneliness and forgotten about simple human joys. Back home, Ivan thought about his meeting with Amina for a long time. It was hard for him to understand why this girl had struck him so much. Maybe it was her kindness and attention to his needs. Maybe it was her cheerfulness, which was so lacking in his life. Or maybe it was something that went beyond ordinary communication. From that day on, Ivan began to notice Amina more often. Sometimes they met at the store, sometimes in the park or on the street. She always greeted him with a smile, and he reciprocated, feeling his heart grow warmer each time. Gradually, a friendship based on respect and mutual understanding developed between them. Ivan, without expecting it, found in Amin what he had long lost, the joy of communication and the feeling that he is not alone in this world. Thus began a story that seemed impossible. A story in which an elderly man and a young girl from different worlds found something dear in each other. Their paths crossed at the right moment to fill each other's lives with new meaning and warmth. After their first meeting, Ivan and Amina began to run into each other more and more often. At first it was chance encounters in a store or on the street, but gradually they began to meet on purpose. Ivan, who used to prefer solitude, began to find pleasure in socializing with Amina. She was that bright ray of light which he lacked in the grey everyday life. Every day their friendship grew stronger. They often walked in the local park, which was a quiet and secluded place, especially in the mornings. Ivan loved this time, when nature woke up with him, when the cool morning air invigorated his old body. Amina found in these walks an opportunity to relax from her studies and enjoy the tranquility of a small town, where life flowed in its own rhythm, not subject to the bustle of the big world. One day, when the sun was already sinking, Ivan and Amina met again in the park. They were sitting on a bench under an old oak tree, enjoying the quiet evening. Ivan looked wistfully at the fallen leaves that the wind played in front of their feet.
It's so peaceful here,
Ivan said quietly, breaking the silence.
I often came here with my wife. We liked to walk in the park, to sit here, under this tree.
Amina nodded, realizing that these memories were dear to him.
How long were you married?
She asked carefully, so as not to hurt his feelings.
52 years.
Ivan answered, his voice trembling from the flood of memories.
She was my support, my friend and life partner. After she left, I couldn't find a place for a long time, as if I had lost a part of myself.
Amina listened to him in silence. It was hard for her to imagine such a long and deep connection, because she was still so young and had only a few short relationships in her life. But she felt the depth and pain of Ivan's loss, and her heart squeezed with pity.
It must have been very hard,
she said softly.
to lose someone you love more than life.
Ivan nodded sadly.
Yes, it was hard. But life goes on. Though I admit the world is different without her. Empty.
He was silent for a moment, and then continued.
But ever since I met you, Amina, I began to feel that not all is lost. You have a vitality about you that I haven't felt around me in a long time. Thank you for that.
Amina smiled touchingly and touched his hand lightly.
Thank you, Ivan. It wasn't easy for me when I came here either. I'm far away from home, from my family. Everything here is new and unfamiliar, but you made it easier for me to adapt. You have become like my own.
Ivan looked at her in surprise.
Native?
He asked her again, hardly believing that he could be important to anyone but his memories.
Yes, native.
Amina confirmed.
You have what I lack here: wisdom, kindness, understanding. You share your memories with me, and I learn from you. This is valuable to me.
They continued to sit on the bench in silence, and that silence was filled with warmth and understanding. In these moments, A special bond developed between them that went beyond ordinary friendship. Their meetings began to take on a ritual character. In the mornings they would walk in the park, and in the evenings they would often meet at Ivan's house to have tea together. Amina would bring sweets, and Ivan would make herbal tea, which he had prepared while his wife was still alive. These tea parties became an important part of their socializing. In Ivan's warm kitchen they shared their stories, thoughts and dreams. One day, after a walk, Ivan invited Amina for tea, as had become a habit. As they sat down at the table, Amina noticed an old photograph on the shelf that showed a young Ivan and his wife.
Is that your wife?
She asked, pointing to the photo. Ivan nodded and took the photo in his hands with a slight smile.
Yes, that's Olga.
He said fondly.
It was at our wedding. We were young and hopeful then. Time flies so fast.
Amina scrutinized the photograph.
It's very beautiful,
she said.
Yes.
Ivan agreed.
And she had a good heart. She always helped people, never complained. I still can't understand how I was so lucky to meet her.
Amina was silent, feeling that for Ivan these memories were both joyful and painful at the same time. She realized that a person who lived a long life held many such stories that shaped his personality. It was important for her, a young girl, to hear these stories to better understand Ivan and his world.
Ivan, tell me more about your childhood,
she suggested, changing the subject to a lighter one.
You grew up here, in this city, didn't you?
Ivan smiled, remembering his childhood.
Yes, I was born and raised here. It was a very different city then. Fewer cars, more fields and forests. We boys used to run around the neighborhood all day long, playing hide and seek, swimming in the river. There were no televisions or telephones, and we found joy in simple things.
As Amina listened to him, she found herself thinking about how different her own childhood was from what Ivan had described. She had grown up in a big city, surrounded by technology and people. But despite that, she felt that their childhoods were similar in some ways after all. She, like Ivan, had sought happiness in simple things.
It was a wonderful time.
Ivan continued.
The world seemed so huge and full of possibilities. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing the world, but life turned out differently. War, work, family. It all kind of crowded out the dreams.
But you still saw a lot of interesting things.
Amina supported him.
And your life is full of memories that you can share.
Yes, you're right.
Ivan agreed.
I am glad that I have lived such a life. I may not have realized all my dreams, but I don't regret anything. What about you, Amina? What are your dreams?
Amina thought for a moment before answering.
I have always dreamed of studying art, traveling the world, seeing the most famous museums and galleries. But most importantly, I want to bring something of myself into this world, to make something meaningful that will remain after me.
Ivan nodded with approval.
That's a wonderful dream,
he said.
I'm sure you can achieve it. You are young, you have every chance.
Amina smiled.
Thank you, Ivan. Your words mean a lot to me.
So over tea and conversation, their evenings passed. They shared their dreams and memories, gradually revealing their souls to each other. The difference in age and culture, which at first seemed to be a barrier, gradually disappeared, giving way to sincere mutual understanding. Over time, their communication became not just a habit, but a necessity. Ivan waited to meet Amina, knowing that these conversations gave him strength and gave meaning to his life. Amina, for her part, found in communication with Ivan not only a source of wisdom, but also a true friendship, which she lacked in her new place. One day, when they were sitting again over a cup of tea, Ivan suddenly said,
You know, Amina, I never thought I could find a friend like you again. You make me feel alive.
Amina, touched by his words, took his hand and said,
And I never thought I would find a friend as wise and kind as you, Ivan. You have changed my life.
Ivan smiled back at her, feeling his heart fill with warmth. After several months of regular meetings and conversations, Ivan and Amina became much closer. Something in their relationship had changed. They were no longer just casual acquaintances, but much closer, almost like family. Their communication was no longer limited to conversations about everyday affairs or studies. Now they shared their innermost thoughts and memories with each other, which helped them to understand and feel each other better. For Ivan, these meetings became a real escape from loneliness. After the death of his wife, he felt lost and lonely. His days stretched slowly and monotonously, and memories of the past only increased the sense of loss. In Amin, he found not only an interesting interlocutor, but also a listener to whom he could confide his experiences and thoughts. Ivan began to tell her stories from his life, shared his memories of childhood, war, post-war years, how he met his wife, their life together. These stories were full of different emotions. Ivan recalled his childhood with nostalgia and warmth. The town where he grew up was very different then, full of life and energy. Ivan recalled with special warmth his parents, who, despite difficult times, always found a way to support their children, to give them a piece of joy and love. However, not all of Ivan's memories were so joyful. He often returned his thoughts to the years of war, which left an indelible mark on his life. As a young boy, he was drafted to the front, and there he saw all the horrors of war. These memories were hard, but Ivan knew that they were part of his life, and he shared them with Amina, feeling that she could understand him. The war had changed him, made him tougher and stronger, but also taught him to appreciate life, every moment of peacetime. When Ivan talked about those years, his voice became muffled and thoughtful. There was pain and fatigue, but also pride that he was able to survive, go through all this and return home. These stories were a kind of therapy for Ivan. They helped him to reflect on his life path, to accept it, and to come to terms with the fact that everything happened the way it happened. Amina listened to him attentively and with interest. She realized that for Ivan these memories were of great value, that they shaped his personality, his view of the world. She often thought about how little she knew about the world, about those times which for Ivan were reality. She had seen a lot of pain and suffering in Africa too, but this was a different pain, a different ordeal. She told Ivan about her life in Africa, about growing up in a small village where life was hard but full of simple joys. Amina grew up in a large family where every day was a struggle for survival. Her village often lacked food, clean water, and medical care, but despite this, people lived and enjoyed every day. Amina recalled how she and other children would run through the fields, help their parents on the farm, play simple games and sing songs. These memories were bright and warm, despite the hardships. However, Amina's life was not always joyful. She told Ivan about the hardships she faced when she decided to study. Education in her country was not accessible to everyone, especially girls. Despite all the difficulties, Amina's parents supported her desire to get an education, even though it was not easy. There was a shortage of textbooks and constant power cuts, but Amina was persistent and persevering, knowing that education was her chance for a better life. When she entered university and got the opportunity to go abroad to study, it was a real miracle for her. However, adapting to a new place was not as easy as she thought it would be. She felt like a stranger in a small European town, far away from home, family, and friends. She had to face prejudice, misunderstanding, loneliness. These difficulties sometimes seemed insurmountable, and there were moments when Amina wanted to give up everything and return home. But meeting Ivan changed many things. In him she found support, which she lacked in this new and alien world. He understood her, listened to her, helped her cope with difficulties, shared his experience. Ivan became for Amina not just a friend, but a mentor, a person who guided her, gave her advice, helped her to realize what was happening. Ivan, for his part, felt that his life had found meaning again. He was glad that he could be useful, that his experience and knowledge were needed by someone. Communicating with Amina helped him realize that despite his age, he could still give a lot to others, that his life did not end with the death of his wife. This new friendship, based on mutual understanding and support, became a real source of inspiration and joy for Ivan. Gradually their meetings became more than just socializing. They began to help each other in different aspects of life. Amina helped Ivan to cope with household difficulties, helped him with shopping, and sometimes cooked national dishes for him, which he tasted with interest. Ivan, in turn, became a real mentor for Amina, helping her to understand complex issues, giving her advice and supporting her in her studies. They became true friends, people who could rely on each other in a difficult moment. Amina no longer felt lonely and lost in a foreign country, and Ivan began to feel the taste for life again. They found in each other what they had been looking for so long: understanding, care and support. Ivan learned to realize that the world is not limited to his town, that there are other countries, cultures, other views on life. Amina realized that old age is not only infirmity and loneliness, that at any age you can be useful and needed, that friendship knows no boundaries neither by age nor by nationality. This relationship became for them a real gift of fate. Each of them found in the other what made their life fuller and richer. Ivan and Amina became a support for each other, which helped them to cope with difficulties and overcome life's obstacles. They became not just friends, but part of each other's lives, people without whom this life would be incomplete and not so bright. Ivan started to leave the house more, to go out more often. His life was filled with new meanings and impressions. Amina became more confident in herself. It was easier for her to adapt to the new life. She felt that there was a person who would always support, listen and help. This relationship, built on mutual understanding, trust and respect, became the foundation on which their friendship was built. Each of them found in the other something native, something that helped them to live and enjoy life, despite all the difficulties and obstacles. Thus, Ivan and Amina became the people who could support each other in any situation, give advice, just listen to each other. They became those who helped to overcome life's challenges, who shared joys and sorrows. Their friendship became an example of how two different lives, two different worlds can unite and create something valuable and important for both of them. As Ivan and Amina's friendship began to grow stronger, they began to spend more time together, and this did not go unnoticed by the people of the small town. In a place like this, where everyone knew each other, any change in routine attracted attention, and soon their relationship became a topic of discussion among the locals. At first, it was just casual glances and whispers behind their backs. Some residents wondered how Ivan, who had always lived a quiet and secluded life after his wife's death, suddenly started spending so much time with a young girl, and even one as unusual as Amina. Most of them did not know how to react to such a friendship, for they had never encountered such situations. For people who grew up and lived all their lives in one small town, such relationships seemed something strange and even suspicious. Gradually, however, these whispers began to turn into open condemnation. Gossip about Ivan and Amina's friendship became the main source of conversation on the streets, in the stores, and at the market. People discussed how Ivan could do such a thing. Many wondered why he would want to associate with such a young girl. The questions multiplied, and in each story, in each conversation, new details appeared, often far from the truth. One of the main sources of discontent was that Amina was African. To the people of this town, who rarely encountered people of a different race, this seemed something unnatural. Many perceived Amina as an outsider who could not possibly be part of their closed and conservative community. This foreignness increased fear and distrust, which was only fueled by rumors and speculation. In addition, the significant age difference between Ivan and Amina raised even more questions and suspicions in people's minds. In their eyes, such a friendship seemed inappropriate. They believed that Ivan, as an older man, should not have such a close relationship with a young girl. Many believed that there could be nothing in common between them, and did not understand how such a connection could have arisen. As time went on, the judgment became more explicit. People who used to greet Ivan in a friendly manner now passed by, barely nodding in his direction. Some even stopped saying hello altogether, ignoring him, as if he no longer existed for them. In the stores, the salespeople were less friendly, their looks saying more than words. At the market, Ivan was increasingly refused concessions or help, and he felt unfriendly glances when he bought food. Amina also noticed a change in attitude. Although she was new here and had not had time to make many acquaintances, she felt that she had become the object of scrutiny and, more importantly, rejection. Locals who had previously looked at her with curiosity and perhaps even benevolence now avoided contact. It became difficult for her to feel comfortable on the streets of the town, where every person she met seemed to condemn her with a mere glance. For Ivan, this judgment was painful and unexpected. He had lived in this town his whole life, knew almost all the residents, and had always felt a part of this community. He had grown up here, worked here, started a family here, buried his wife here. It seemed to him that over the years he had gained the respect and understanding of his neighbors. But now, because of this friendship, which he thought was honest and pure, Ivan faced misunderstanding and even hostility from people he considered friends and neighbors. At first, Ivan tried to ignore what was happening. He convinced himself that it was just a temporary phenomenon, that people would get used to it and realize that there was nothing wrong with their relationship with Amina. However, as time went on, he began to notice that the situation was only getting worse. Neighbors with whom he used to have conversations now refused to even talk to him, and old friends began to avoid meeting. He realized that their friendship with Amina had become a kind of challenge to the patterns and traditions of this small, conservative society. Rumors spread even among those who were not directly related to Ivan and Amina. Local cafes and streets discussed their relationship, and each new rumor added fuel to the fire of public discontent. Some even began to speculate that there might be more than just friendship between Ivan and Amina. These speculations, of course, were far from reality, but they only added to the negative attitude of those around them. While Ivan tried to remain calm, realizing that his friendship with Amina had become a target for social stigma, this situation was especially difficult for Amina. She had come here to study, to start a new life, away from home, where she had always felt the support and warmth of her family. But now she faced misunderstanding and hostility that seemed unreasonable and unfair. For a young girl who was already in a foreign country and trying to adapt to a new environment, this social pressure was a serious challenge. Amina tried to ignore the rumors, but it was hard for her to remain indifferent to the ill will that surrounded her. Talk about her friendship with Ivan began to appear in university circles, and even though professors and students were not so much involved in the city gossip, it still affected her studies and general state of mind. It became difficult for her to concentrate on her studies, constantly feeling judgmental looks on her and realizing that she was being discussed behind her back. The hardest thing for Ivan was realizing that the people he thought were his friends did not support him. No one tried to get his point of view. No one asked why their friendship with Amina had become so important to him. He began to feel isolated, lonely, as if the whole world had turned its back on him. These changes took a heavy toll on his well-being, and he began to leave the house less often, becoming more and more withdrawn. Amina, seeing how Ivan was suffering from public condemnation, was also worried. She felt guilty that their friendship was the cause of his problems, and this depressed her even more. However, she realized that their relationship meant a great deal to Ivan and could not just walk out of his life to avoid causing him more trouble. This societal opposition exacerbated Ivan's internal conflict. On the one hand, he did not want to give up his friendship with Amina, who had become a source of joy and support for him. But on the other hand, he could not help but notice how their relationship was destroying his life and reputation in the eyes of others. He was faced with a difficult choice to continue their friendship despite the condemnation, or to give in to societal pressure and give up a relationship that had become important to him. These doubts began to reflect on their relationship. Ivan became more withdrawn. He went for walks with Amina less often, avoided long conversations, more often secluded in his house, immersed in thoughts that their friendship might be a mistake. He became more cautious in his statements, trying not to hurt Amina, but at the same time feeling that some invisible wall was appearing between them. Amina, seeing the changes in Ivan's behavior, also began to feel insecure. She realized that their relationship was changing, that doubts and fears were beginning to grip them both. She began to notice that Ivan was no longer as open as he used to be, that he was trying to keep his distance. This frustrated and frightened her, because she didn't want to lose this bond that had become an important support for her in a new and unfamiliar world. Every day their doubts grew stronger. Ivan became more and more convinced that their friendship could harm Amina, and this guilt became unbearable for him. He began to think that perhaps it would be better if they stopped communicating, if Amina found new friends, those who would understand her better and could support her in her studies and life in a foreign country. Amina, for her part, began to think more and more about her future. She realized that their friendship with Ivan had become a source of joy as well as difficulties. She felt that their relationship would not be accepted by society, that they would always face misunderstanding and judgment. She was afraid to think that perhaps she had made a mistake in allowing herself such a close friendship with a man who was not only much older, but also belonged to a different world, a different culture. These thoughts and fears began to gradually destroy their relationship from within. Each day they became more and more confident that their feelings for each other were real and important, These realizations began to strengthen their resolve to follow their hearts, despite societal pressures. They began to make a conscious effort to not let outside opinion destroy what they were building together. Although it was not easy, they realized that if they allowed societal standards and the opinions of others to influence their relationship, they risked losing what had become an important part of their lives. Ivan and Amina decided to focus on what they could control, their own feelings and attitudes towards each other. They began meeting more often, emphasizing their common interests and hobbies, which helped strengthen their bond and create new positive memories. These meetings became a true refuge from the outside world, a place where they could be themselves and openly express their feelings without fear of judgment. They began traveling together, exploring the neighborhoods around the city, attending cultural events and simply enjoying time with each other. These moments of joy and discovery helped them strengthen their bond and dispel any remaining doubts. They realized that each trip they took together, each new tradition they created, became part of their unique history. Over time, Ivan and Amina noticed that they became less sensitive to the opinions of others. They learned to accept negative views and judgmental comments as an inevitable part of their journey, rather than an obstacle that could destroy their bond. They realized that their relationships do not depend on how they are perceived by others, but on how they themselves feel about each other and how they value that connection. Ivan became more confident in his decision, and his fears began to gradually diminish. He no longer saw social pressure as something that should determine his actions. Instead, he focused on how his friendship with Amina was making his life more fulfilling. This change in his perception was a significant step toward overcoming his internal conflict and accepting that his friendship with Amina had a right to exist. Amina, realizing that her fears about possible consequences and misunderstanding of others could no longer determine her actions, began to approach her interactions with Ivan with renewed energy and openness. She realized that if they both truly believed in their connection, that was the foundation for their relationship. She made a decision not to let fears and doubts rule her life and relationship. This new phase in their lives was a time of acceptance and growth for both of them. They learned to value their relationship not only for what it gives each other, but also for what it helps them grow as individuals. They realized that their bond was unique and valuable precisely because they overcame all the obstacles that stood in their way and were able to keep their feelings alive despite all the challenges. Ivan and Amina became more confident in their bond and began to make plans for the future in which their relationship had an important place. They realized that they still had many challenges ahead of them, but now they were ready to face them together, building on what they had built and on what they had learned to appreciate in each other. This new confidence and realization of their own strength became a source of hope and motivation for them to move forward despite all the external challenges and obstacles. After a significant amount of time spent in doubt and disagreement, Ivan and Amina came to an important realization that dramatically changed their perception of their relationship and fostered acceptance of their connection. They realized that their feelings for each other were not dependent on age differences, cultural differences, or public opinion. This realization was a pivotal moment for them to accept their relationship and openly declare it, despite all the challenges ahead. Ivan, who had previously suffered from fear of the possible consequences of his relationship with Amina, was finally able to free himself from internal pressures. He realized that age and cultural differences could not be a barrier to sincere and deep feelings. He remembered how many years ago, when he had a wife, he was not afraid to go against the current for the sake of his beliefs and feelings. This awareness helped him realize that in his present situation, he too should act in accordance with his sincere feelings, rather than succumb to societal pressures. Amina, in turn, came to realize that her fears and worries about how their relationship would be perceived by others were nothing more than temporary obstacles. She began to see her feelings for Ivan as a source of inner strength and confidence, rather than something to be justified or conform to external standards. Amina realized that her cultural heritage and age could not determine how meaningful and true her feelings could be. They began to talk openly about their relationship, doing so with the realization that for some it might come as a surprise or even cause for judgment. The first steps toward openness were difficult, but they decided that it didn't make sense to hide their feelings any further. They began attending social events together, declaring their connection not only among friends and acquaintances, but also in the wider public space. The process of openly acknowledging their relationship was far from smooth. They faced disapproval and condemnation from a part of the public that still held traditional views and stereotypes. Many people still considered their friendship strange and inappropriate. When talking about their relationship, Ivan and Amina faced reproaches, whispers and even direct attacks from those who did not understand or accept their choice. However, despite this, they also found support from a few people close to them. These people, who truly knew them and understood their feelings, proved to be not only supportive but also a source of inspiration and reassurance. Ivan and Amina, having overcome all obstacles and doubts, decided to spend the rest of their lives together. They found happiness and harmony in their union, which became a source of joy and support for both of them. With each passing day, their bond grew stronger and they began traveling extensively, discovering new horizons and immersing themselves in each other's cultures. These trips were not only an opportunity to expand their horizons, but also proof that true love truly knows no boundaries. Their adventures and new discoveries together strengthened their relationship, emphasizing that true love can overcome any differences and barriers. Several weeks have passed since Ivan and Amina decided to ignore the condemnation from the residents of the town and focus on their feelings. Their relationship began to develop with renewed vigor, gaining more depth and sincerity. Every new day brought something new, made them get to know each other more and more. Ivan, feeling his heart come alive again, found great pleasure in talking with Amina. At first their communication was modest and cautious, but each time it became more open. Amina talked about her dreams and plans for the future, and Ivan felt how these conversations filled his life with meaning that he had long lost. One evening, when the sun was already setting over the horizon, they decided to take a walk along the river. A light breeze played with the strands of Amina's hair, and her laughter rang in the air like ringing bells. Ivan couldn't take his eyes off her. He felt that their bond was getting stronger with every passing moment.
You know, Amina, I haven't felt so calm for a long time. It's different with you. It's like you're giving me back my youth.
Amina, looking at Ivan, smiled her warm, sincere smile, which made Ivan's soul feel light.
I'm glad that I can give you this feeling. You know, Ivan, you've become someone very important to me too. Here, away from home, from everything I knew, you became not just a friend, but a family for me.
Ivan felt his heart warm at her words. He did not know how long he would be able to hide his true feelings, but he understood that this moment of their meeting was not accidental. He wanted to tell her more about his life, about his dreams and regrets. They continued walking along the river, and Ivan began to remember his childhood.
When I was a child, I dreamed of becoming a traveler. I wanted to see the whole world, to know its beauty and dangers. But life decided otherwise. First the war, then family, work. All my dreams have remained dreams.
Amina listened attentively without interrupting him. She felt how important those words were to him, and she didn't want to break this moment.
But, you know, Amina, meeting you gave me a new inspiration. I realized that it might not be too late to fulfill at least some of my dreams.
Amina turned to Ivan and put her hand on his shoulder to show that she was there and ready to support him.
You know, Ivan, it's never too late to dream and make your dreams come true. Perhaps your travels can start with something small but important, and I'll be happy to be a part of these adventures if you want to.
Amina's words inspired Ivan. He felt that her eyes shone with sincere support and a desire to help, and this feeling filled his heart with joy and confidence that together they would be able to cope with any difficulties. After a walk along the river, they returned to Ivan's house. Evening twilight gradually enveloped the town, and a light breeze brought coolness with it. Ivan invited Amina to the house for tea, and she gladly agreed. They sat down in the kitchen, which was furnished with old wooden cabinets and chairs that remembered Ivan's youth. While the kettle was boiling on the stove, Ivan took out a box with old photographs. He had not opened it for a long time, afraid to immerse himself in memories that brought not only joy, but also pain. But this time he felt ready to share his past.
Look, this is my family. I'm still a little boy, and these are my parents. They were amazing people.
Amina took the photo and looked at it carefully, trying to make out the details.
Your parents look very kind. I'm sure they've given you a lot of love and wisdom.
Ivan nodded, feeling tears coming to his eyes. He hadn't talked about his parents for a long time, and it was hard for him to think about them, knowing that they had long since left this world.
Yes, they were like that. They taught me a lot, but unfortunately I wasn't always there when they needed my help. Sometimes I feel like I've let them down.
Amina, seeing his agitation, gently put her hand on his palm.
Ivan, I'm sure they would be proud of you. You've been through a lot, and despite that, you've remained a kind and wise man. Don't blame yourself for what you can't change.
Ivan felt her words penetrate into his heart, removing the burden of guilt that he had been carrying for so long. He felt better, and he was grateful to Amina for her understanding and support. In the following days, their meetings became regular. Ivan and Amina began to spend more time together, finding joy in simple things: morning walks, conversations about life, plans for the future. They began to find common hobbies that strengthened their bond. Amina, for example, taught Ivan how to cook some African dishes, and he enjoyed learning new flavors and aromas.
You know, Ivan, I have always dreamed of visiting many places around the world, exploring different cultures, meeting new people. For me, it's not just traveling, but a way to get to know the world and understand myself better.
Ivan smiled as he watched her eyes light up at the thought of the future.
I have never been to Africa, but I have heard many wonderful stories about its beauty. Maybe one day we'll go there together? I would like to see the world through your eyes.
Amina nodded happily, and her smile was a response to his suggestion.
That would be wonderful, Ivan. I will be happy to show you my homeland and introduce you to its culture. We can go on a journey together and discover a lot of new things.
These conversations about the future and dreams further strengthened their bond. Ivan began to feel that, despite the difference in age and life experience, they had become a source of inspiration and support for each other. Every day, he became more and more convinced that their meeting was not accidental. One evening, after a long walk through the city, they stopped on a hill overlooking the whole town. The setting sun turned the sky pink and gold, creating a feeling of peace and harmony.
You know, Amina, I always thought that my life was already over, that I could only wait for my turn. But you showed me that there is always room for new feelings, new discoveries. Thank you for that.
Amina turned to him and smiled tenderly, feeling her heart fill with warmth.
Ivan, I think that everyone can find joy and happiness at any age. The main thing is not to be afraid to open up to new things. You have given me so much wisdom and support, and I am very grateful for that.
They stood side by side watching the sunset, and at that moment they felt their hearts beating in unison. After Ivan and Amina started spending more time together, and their relationship became more visible to others, the town started to make noise. In a small community where everyone knew each other, news spread like lightning. At first it was just whispers behind my back and sidelong glances. People talked about them on the streets, in the store, in the church. Ivan felt the weight of those condemning looks on him every time he left the house. Amina also couldn't help but notice the changes. The smiles that greeted her in the first months were replaced by restrained glances and pursed lips. However, despite the pressure, they continued to remain loyal to each other. Their relationship developed, and every day they found more joy and solace in communicating with each other. It was difficult, but each other's support gave them the strength to ignore the condemnation. One morning, when Ivan and Amina left the house to walk around the city, they came across Ivan's neighbor, Marta. Martha was known for her penchant for gossip, and her presence was always accompanied by embarrassing comments. But this time her face expressed more than just curiosity.
Ivan, Amina, good morning,
she said with a smile, in which it was hard not to notice a note of sarcasm.
How you must be enjoying each other's company.
Ivan frowned slightly, understanding what this conversation was leading to. Amina, on the contrary, remained calm.
Good morning, Martha. Yes, we really enjoy our time together.
Martha frowned, seeing that her remark had not had the desired effect.
Well, people say, you don't see this every day. An unusual combination.
Ivan couldn't stand it.
Martha, people will always talk. We don't have to make excuses for our feelings. Life is too short to spend it pleasing others.
With that, he took Amina's hand, and they continued on their way, leaving Martha behind with her mouth open. In fact, it wasn't easy for Ivan to stay calm. He knew that their relationship would be the subject of discussion and that not everyone would understand or accept their choice. But he also knew that their love was more than the opinion of others. Every time they were together, he felt his heart fill with warmth as the strength and joy of life that he had lost a long time ago returned. But not all residents of the town were hostile. Shortly after meeting Marta, Victor, an old friend of Ivan, whom they had not seen for a long time, approached them.
"Ivan, Amina, glad to see you,"
he said, smiling sincerely.
I wanted to say that I am very happy for you. Sometimes it's hard for people to accept something new, but that doesn't mean they're right.
Ivan looked at Victor in surprise. These were the first words of support he had heard in recent weeks.
Thank you, Victor. It means a lot to us. We're just trying to live our lives and be happy.
"And you're doing the right thing. Your life is your business. I know what it's like to be judged by everyone around you for your decisions, but the important thing is that you are happy. And if you need someone to support you, know that I am always there."
Amina nodded gratefully to Victor. She felt that their world was getting a little brighter with each act of support. The next few weeks proved to be a real test for Ivan and Amina. But other residents of the town began to approach them, who also expressed their support and understanding. These were those who saw in their relationship something more than just a contradiction of social norms. They saw real feelings, sincere affection, and a desire to be together, despite all the obstacles. Among them was Lydia, an elderly woman who often sat on a park bench, watching the life of the town. She has always been known for her wisdom and ability to find the right words in any situation. One evening, when Ivan and Anna were sitting on the bench next to her, Lydia addressed them.
"You know, there are things in life that are difficult to understand if you look at them through the prism of society and its expectations, but I can see how much you care about each other. This is much more important than the opinion of those who cannot or do not want to understand."
Ivan nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Lydia. Your words are what we needed to hear. We just want to be happy without hurting anyone."
"You know, I have lived a long life and realised that happiness comes to those who are ready to accept it despite all obstacles. Don't let anyone ruin what you have."
Amina smiled and said softly,
We will try, Lydia. Thank you for your support.
Such words of support, though rare, helped Ivan and Amina feel more confident in their choice. They understood that, despite the condemnation and whispers behind their backs, there are people who see something valuable and worthy of respect in their relationship. This gave them the strength to continue fighting for their happiness and not give up in the face of difficulties. As time went on, they began to notice that the reaction of society was gradually changing. Local residents, seeing how Ivan and Amina confidently stick together, how they support each other, began to realize that their relationship is not just a whim or a fleeting connection. They began to respect their choices more and even admire their resilience. Some of those who initially condemned them began to change. They began to realize that there was something deeper behind the external difference, true love and affection, which could not be ignored. Gradually, Ivan and Amina began to notice that they were no longer the target of gossip and condemnation. People began to accept them for who they are, and this gave them hope for the future. But the biggest support came from those who were ready to stand up for them, despite public opinion. These people became a real support for Ivan and Amina. Their support helped them not only to feel more confident, but also to keep moving forward, despite all the difficulties. Victor, who was the first to express his support, became a true friend and ally. He helped Ivan and Amina cope with difficulties, advised them on how best to act in a given situation, and was always there when they needed it. Lydia, a wise old woman, also became their reliable ally. She often invited them to her home to talk and support them in difficult moments. Her words were always filled with wisdom and kindness, and they felt that they could trust her in everything. Ivan and Amina began to feel that their lives were changing for the better. They became more confident in their abilities and in their relationships, realizing that, despite all the difficulties, they were going the right way. They understood that their bond was more than just love or affection. It was a source of strength that helped them overcome all obstacles and move forward. One evening, when they were sitting on the veranda of Ivan's house and enjoying the sunset, Amina looked thoughtfully at the horizon and said,
You know, Ivan, I never thought that I would be able to find something so important and valuable here. but now I understand that we should not be afraid to be ourselves and follow our hearts.
Ivan looked at her with a smile and nodded. You're right, Amina. Life is too short to spend it pleasing others. We should be happy and live the way we want. With these words, they held hands and looked at the sunset, feeling that their path, although difficult, had become much brighter thanks to the support of each other and those who were nearby. Now they knew that they could overcome any difficulties if they stuck together.
Eager to find out what happens next in this story? Comment continue below.
It has been several months since Ivan and Amina openly declared their relationship. Their love grew stronger every day, despite the difficulties and condemnation from a part of society. But deep down, they both knew that their bond had to go through another test meeting with their families. They decided that it was time to introduce each other to their families in order to enlist their blessing and support. This was an important step, because neither of them wanted to build a future without the approval of their loved ones. Ivan was older than Amina, and he had 3 adult children who lived in different cities. The children rarely came to the small town where their father lived, but they kept in touch with him by phone and through rare visits. Ivan had not felt intimacy with them for a long time, and this decision to introduce them to Amina caused him concern. He knew that his children might not understand his choice, especially after the death of their mother, whom they loved and revered. Amina, in turn, was worried about her parents' reaction. Her family lived in a distant African country, and she knew that her parents held strict traditional views. The first meeting with Ivan's family was scheduled for Saturday. Ivan had been preparing for this day for a long time, not knowing how his children would react. He contacted them by phone, explained that he wanted them to come to introduce them to someone who had become an important person to him. The children, despite their surprise and perhaps even some dissatisfaction, agreed to come. They didn't know all the details, but they felt it was important to their father. When the day of the meeting came, Ivan was visibly nervous. He knew that his children were used to seeing him as a widower who dedicated his life to their mother's memory. He was afraid that they might not accept Amina, that their attitude towards him might change. But despite all the fears, Ivan was determined to show his children that love can be found at any age, that it knows no boundaries. Amina was also excited. She understood that this day was important not only for Ivan, but also for her. Her thoughts were full of doubts and questions. How will they react to it? Would they accept her as part of the family? She dressed modestly but tastefully, trying to make a good impression. When Ivan's children arrived, tension immediately hung in the house. Ivan met them at the door, and it was clear from their expressions that they were surprised and perhaps a little confused. They entered the house and saw Amina standing next to their father. The first moments of silence seemed like an eternity. All eyes were on the two of them. The first minutes of the meeting were spent in awkwardness and misunderstanding. Ivan's children did not expect to see a young woman next to their father, and this caused them mixed feelings. They started asking questions, cautiously at first, trying to figure out what was going on. Amina answered their questions calmly and with dignity, explaining how she and Ivan met, how their relationship developed, and how she feels about their father. Gradually, as the conversation continued, the tension began to subside. Ivan's children began to see in Amin not just a young woman who entered their father's life, but a person who sincerely cares about him. They saw how she supported him, how she looked at him with tenderness and respect. They also noticed how Ivan glows when he talks about her, how he smiles when he looks at her. These little details couldn't help but make them realize that their father had really found someone who made him happy. However, not everything went smoothly. Ivan's middle son, Mikhail, was especially wary. He believed that their father was betraying their mother's memory by finding solace in someone else. It was difficult for him to accept the fact that someone else could take the place next to his father, which previously belonged only to his mother. He expressed his doubts openly, without hiding his displeasure. However, Amina was not inferior in benevolence. She did not try to defend herself or justify herself. She understood that this was also a test for him, and tried to be as honest and sincere as possible. Ivan, seeing that the conversation had reached an impasse, decided to intervene. He told the children that life is too short to live on memories, and that he feels his heart coming alive again next to Amina. He explained that he was not trying to replace their mother or forget about her. He will always love her, but that doesn't mean he can't be happy again. These words made an impression on the children. They saw in their father's words not just a desire to justify themselves, but deep sincerity and a desire for happiness. It took them a while to understand and accept this, but by the end of the meeting, they began to see Amina in a new light. Perhaps their relationship with their father will not be the same as before, but they realized that his happiness and his right to a new life are important. The next day, Ivan and Amina decided to contact her family. Amina knew that this would be an even more difficult test, since her parents were far away and could not see how happy she was with Ivan. They could only hear her words and judge based on their own beliefs and beliefs. Her parents held traditional views, and Amina knew that for them her decision to be with Ivan would be a shock. They made a video call to at least see each other's faces. When the screen lit up, Amina's parents looked at her with surprise and even some alarm. They saw a man next to her who was much older than they could have imagined. Their faces expressed a mixture of surprise, disappointment, and concern. Amina began the conversation by explaining that she had found a man who had become important and meaningful to her. She told how Ivan supports her, how they found something special in each other that they had both been looking for all their lives. She spoke with feeling, hoping that her parents would be able to understand and accept her choice. At first, the reaction of the parents was expected. They expressed their incomprehension and even anger. They couldn't understand why their daughter chose a man who was several decades older than her, who lived in a completely different world. They asked questions that were full of doubts and even fear for their daughter's future. But Amina did not give up. She patiently explained how she and Ivan found support and love in each other, how they understand and respect each other. She talked about how Ivan taught her to appreciate every moment of her life, how he supports her in difficult moments. Her words were filled with sincerity and love, and it gradually began to affect her parents. They noticed how her eyes lit up when she talked about Ivan, how she smiled, remembering their moments together. This was not the daughter they had sent to a distant country. She was an adult, confident woman who knew what she wanted from life. Gradually, Amina's parents began to soften. They saw that their daughter had found something important for herself, that she was not lost or confused. They began to realize that her choice, although strange and incomprehensible to them, was based on sincere feelings. They saw that she was happy, and that was the most important thing. After a long conversation that was filled with tears, laughter, and deep discussions, Amina's parents began to make her decision. They realized that her happiness and her right to choose were more important than their own ideas of what her life should look like. Over time, both families began to see that, despite all the differences, Ivan and Amina really found what they were looking for in each other. They realized that love knows no boundaries, neither age, nor culture, nor distance. The important thing is that they were happy together, that they supported each other and were ready to go through all the trials for the sake of their love. These meetings, although difficult, turned out to be an important step for Ivan and Amina. They helped them understand that their connection is important not only for themselves, but also for their families. They realized that despite all the difficulties, their love is worth fighting for. And although there were many more challenges ahead of them, they knew that they could go through them together if they held on to each other. After meeting the families, Ivan and Amina's life changed dramatically. They thought that the most difficult thing was to receive a blessing from their relatives, but in fact it turned out that new, no less difficult trials awaited them. Family meetings were just the beginning of the path they were to embark on together. The reactions of their families have left a deep mark on their souls. Despite the fact that both families gradually began to accept their relationship, the initial doubts and perplexities of their relatives made Ivan and Amina think about the correctness of their choice. Both of them experienced internal contradictions and fears, which became especially acute after meeting with their families. Ivan was worried about how his adult children would perceive their relationship in the long run. He was afraid that he would lose touch with them, or that they would start looking at him differently. Amina, in turn, could not get rid of the thought that she had let her parents down by choosing a path that was so very different from their expectations. Public pressure has also not abated. The residents of the town continued to be divided into two camps: those who supported Ivan and Amina, and those who still considered their union inappropriate. Whispers behind their backs, disapproving glances, and sometimes even open ridicule have become commonplace for them. Every day seemed like a new challenge, and every day it became more difficult for them to remain unperturbed. One day, after a particularly hard day, When people's judgmental looks and comments seemed especially angry and painful, Ivan and Amina realized that they needed to change something. They realized that simply ignoring negative feedback and discontent from society is no longer enough. They understood that without the right approach, their feelings for each other might simply not be able to withstand such pressure. It was at this point that they decided to seek professional help. Their decision to turn to a family psychologist was not easy, but they both realized that this could be the very step that would help them preserve their relationship and overcome their inner fears. They chose a psychologist who specialized in working with couples experiencing intercultural and interage differences. From the first sessions, it became clear that they had a difficult job ahead of them. The psychologist suggested that they start by discussing their deepest fears and anxieties. Ivan and Amina had to learn to listen to each other and express their feelings without fear of condemnation. It was harder than they expected. Ivan was never used to talking openly about his feelings, and it was not easy for Amina to share her thoughts, knowing that her experiences could further worry Ivan. However, as they continued to work on themselves and their relationship, they began to notice positive changes. They have become more aware of where their fears come from and how to deal with them. Ivan, who has always tended to withdraw into himself and avoid talking about problems, began to realize that open communication with Amina brought him relief and helped him cope with internal tension. He learned to talk about what was bothering him and realized that his fears were largely based on past experiences and did not always reflect reality. Amina, in turn, learned not only to listen to Ivan, but also to accept his fears and experiences without condemnation. She realized that her own fears were related to the fear of losing the support and love she had found in Ivan. The psychologist helped her realize that her fears are normal and that it is important to learn how to talk about them and not hide them deep inside. Working with a psychologist also helped them understand that many of their problems are related not only to their internal fears, but also to external factors such as social pressure and cultural differences. They began to realize that it was necessary to learn to adapt to the environment, but at the same time maintain their individuality and the uniqueness of their relationships. They have become more confident in their right to happiness, despite the opinions of others. In addition, a psychologist helped them develop strategies on how to deal with negative situations. They have learned to distinguish constructive criticism from just malicious or unfounded comments. Now, when someone tried to hurt them or criticize them, they could calmly discuss it with each other and decide how best to respond. This was an important step in their development as a couple, as they learned not only to protect their relationship, but also to support each other in difficult moments. Sessions with a psychologist also helped Ivan and Amina to better understand their own expectations of a relationship. Ivan realized that many of his fears were related to the fact that he was afraid of losing someone he loved again. The loss of his wife had left a deep mark on his soul, and he did not want to go through such pain again. Working with a psychologist helped him understand that the fear of losing Amina should not prevent him from enjoying their relationship and being happy together. Amina, on the other hand, realized that her fears were related to the feeling that she did not meet the expectations of others. Her culture and family always expected certain actions and decisions from her, and her choice to be with Ivan seemed wrong to them. However, in the process of working with a psychologist, she realized that she has the right to her own happiness and her own decisions, and that her feelings and desires should not depend on the opinions of others. Over time, thanks to the joint work and support of each other, Ivan and Amina began to feel that their bond was becoming even deeper and stronger. They realized that they can cope with difficulties and overcome obstacles if they act together and support each other. This realization gave them confidence in their choice and the strength to move on, despite external obstacles. In addition, working with a psychologist helped them create new rituals and traditions that strengthened their relationship. They began to devote more time to things that brought them joy and satisfaction, whether it was walking together, reading books, or just quiet evenings at home. These moments have become a source of inspiration and strength for them, helping to maintain love and affection even in the most difficult times. Ivan and Amina also began to open up more to their families, sharing their successes and joys with them. They realized that the support of loved ones can be an important source of strength and began to actively work to strengthen these ties. Gradually, thanks to their efforts, both families began to accept their relationship more and more, realizing that Ivan and Amina's happiness was truly sincere and should not be questioned. Thus, despite all the external and internal obstacles, Ivan and Amina were able to overcome the difficulties that faced them. Their bond has become even stronger and more meaningful. They have learned to support each other and overcome any challenges together. They realize that love is not only feelings, but also work, effort, and the desire to be together, despite all the difficulties. And this love, their love, has become a source of strength, inspiration, and real happiness for them. After many months of shared experiences, working on relationships, and overcoming obstacles, Ivan and Amina decide to take the next step in their life together. Their decision to live together became a natural extension of their bond, a symbol of their love and mutual respect. For Ivan and Amina, it was not just a step, but an important decision, which meant a willingness to accept each other completely, with all the joys and difficulties that life together brings. Ivan and Amina began to look for a place that could become their common home. They wanted to create a space in which each of them could feel comfortable and free. Ivan, with his love of comfort and tradition, dreamed of a quiet house with a small garden where he could spend time outdoors. Amina, in turn, wanted their house to be filled with light and life, so that it reflected her cultural roots and the desire for new experiences. They decided that their home should combine the best of their worlds, be a place where their traditions and modern views on life intertwine. After much searching and discussion, they finally found a house that suited both of them. It was an old but sturdy house on the outskirts of the town, with a large garden where fruit trees and shrubs grew. The house needed renovation, but it only inspired them. They decided that working together to improve their home would help them understand each other better and strengthen their relationship. A new stage of their life has begun, filled with the joy of creating their own space. Ivan and Amina planned together what their new home would look like, choosing colors for the walls, furniture, and accessories that would reflect their personalities. In each room, they tried to create an atmosphere in which each of them could feel at home. They chose soft, warm tones for the living room, where they were going to spend their evenings reading or talking. In the bedroom, they created a cozy and peaceful space that would promote rest and recuperation. They paid special attention to the kitchen. Ivan, who loves to cook according to old recipes, wanted the kitchen to be functional and comfortable, and Amina sought to add bright accents there, reminding her of home. They chose dishes, pots and pans together, trying to make the kitchen not just a place for cooking, but also a place for communication and creativity. They also decided to create a corner in the garden where they could enjoy nature. Ivan planted several fruit trees that reminded him of his childhood spent on rural land, and Amina created a small flower garden filled with plants that reminded her of her native Africa. Together they spent their evenings in the garden, enjoying the cool evening air and chatting under the starry sky. When the renovation was completed and the house began to take on the look they had dreamed of, Ivan and Amina felt that their efforts had not been in vain. Their house became a reflection of themselves, their love and desire to create something in common. Every detail, every element of the interior told the story of their journey, their life together, full of joy and difficulties. There was no place for boredom in their shared life. They constantly found new hobbies and interests that helped them get even closer. They started planning their trips, small trips around the neighborhood to discover new places and fall in love with the nature that surrounded them all over again. They dreamed of visiting the places they always talked about, but never had the opportunity to see together. These trips became a source of new impressions and memories for them. Ivan and Amina also began to make plans for their future. They discussed how they would like to spend the next years of their lives, what goals to set for themselves. It was important for Ivan to preserve the comfort and tranquility that they had created in their home, and he dreamed of living in harmony with nature, gardening and just enjoying every day. Amina, full of energy and striving for development, wanted to continue her education and career, explore new cultures and share her knowledge with others. Their plans for the future included not only personal goals, but also common projects that they would like to implement together. They started thinking about starting a small business related to their hobbies and interests. Ivan, with his experience in agriculture, suggested creating a small eco-farming project where they could grow organic products and teach other people sustainable farming. Amina, inspired by her knowledge in the field of culture and art, proposed to create a cultural center where exhibitions, workshops and lectures on various cultures and traditions could be held. These ideas filled their lives with new meaning and inspiration. They began actively planning, seeking resources and support to realize their dreams. Friends and like-minded people often gathered in their house, who supported their initiatives and helped them find ways to bring their plans to life. Every day brought new tasks and challenges, but they gladly accepted them, knowing that they were working on something meaningful and important for both of them. Ivan and Amina also started thinking about expanding their family. They discussed the possibility of having children and raising them in love and harmony. For Ivan, this was an important step that would symbolize the continuation of his family and legacy, and for Amina, it was an opportunity to create her own family nest filled with warmth and care. They dreamed of how they would raise their children, share their values and traditions with them, teach them to respect and appreciate the culture and heritage of each parent. Every day their life together became more intense and full. They learned to enjoy the little things, support each other in difficult moments and overcome all obstacles together. Their love became stronger and stronger, and their plans for the future became more ambitious and inspiring. Together they began to write a new chapter of their lives, in which there was room for both difficulties and joy. They realized that love is not only feelings, but also constant work on themselves and their relationships, striving to be the best for each other. Their house has become not only a place of residence, but also a symbol of their common life, their love and desire to move forward despite all the difficulties and challenges. Ivan and Amina continue to dream about the future, knowing that there are many more amazing moments and discoveries ahead of them. They believed that together they could overcome any difficulties and realize all their dreams. And although they knew that life could be unpredictable, they were sure of one thing: their love is the most valuable thing they have, and it's worth all the effort. Over the years spent together, Ivan and Amina became more and more convinced that their relationship was not just a chance meeting of two people, but something much deeper and more meaningful. They realized that their love is a kind of fate, a chance given to them that cannot be missed. Together they became an example for others, showing that love and mutual understanding are able to overcome any barriers and obstacles. This awareness became a source of inspiration and energy for them, which they began to share with others. Ivan and Amina began to actively participate in the life of their community, trying to change people's attitudes towards their relationships and, in general, to the concept of love and partnership. They realized that their experience could be useful to others, that their story could inspire people to be brave in love and life, to be open and ready to accept new things. For the first time in a long time, Ivan felt the strength and desire to act, to be useful to society. He saw this as an opportunity not only for himself, but also for Amina, for their common goal to show people that happiness is possible, despite all difficulties and obstacles. They started by communicating more with their neighbors, inviting them to tea parties and dinners. These meetings often turned into long conversations about life, love, understanding, and tolerance. Ivan shared his life experience, talked about his experiences, losses, and how he found the strength to start a new life with Amina. Amina, in turn, shared her view of the world, her understanding of the culture and traditions that she brought from her native Africa. These conversations helped people to understand them better, to see in their relationship something more than just friendship or the union of two people of different ages and backgrounds. They soon realized that their small gatherings had a lot of influence. People started coming to them with questions and requests for advice, sharing their stories and experiences. Ivan and Amina became not only hospitable hosts, but also a kind of mentor for those who were looking for answers to their life questions. They began to organize regular meetings where they shared their thoughts and experiences, discussed important topics, and helped people find their ways to happiness and harmony. Their house gradually turned into a kind of center of attraction for everyone who was looking for understanding and support. People came to them to hear their stories, to learn more about how they cope with difficulties and find joy in life. Ivan and Amina were glad to see that their experience helps others, that they can be useful and inspiring. It added meaning to their lives and made their relationship even more valuable. Realizing the importance of their love and how it affects others led Ivan and Amina to think that they could do even more. They decided to participate in local events and celebrations to share their story with a wider audience. They began visiting schools, libraries, and community centers, sharing their experiences and inspiring others to be brave in love and life. Their stories resonated with people of different ages and cultures, and many found something important and close to themselves in their stories. Over time, Ivan and Amina became well-known figures in their community. They were invited to speak at various events, and they were happy to share their experiences, saying that true love and mutual understanding can overcome any barriers. They talked about how they learned to understand each other, how they overcame difficulties and found a common language, despite differences in age and culture. These performances have become a way for them to share their wisdom and inspiration, to help others find their way to happiness and harmony. They also started writing articles and notes for the local newspaper, talking about their journey, their experiences, and the lessons they learned from their lives. These articles quickly became popular, and many readers found answers to their questions, support and inspiration in them. Ivan and Amina were glad that their experience could be useful to others, that they could share their wisdom and help people find their place in the world. Ivan and Amina began to actively participate in public life, supporting various initiatives aimed at improving life in their community. They helped organize events aimed at supporting families, children, and the elderly, participated in charity events and volunteer projects. Their active participation in the life of the community attracted more and more people who wanted to be part of their initiatives and support their initiatives. Over time, their efforts began to bring tangible results. People in their community have become more open and tolerant, and have begun to show more respect and understanding for the differences and characteristics of others. Ivan and Amina saw how their work and efforts helped to change the world around them, and this inspired them to new feats and achievements. Their story has become an example of how love and mutual understanding can change the world for the better. They prove that age, culture, and social differences are not an obstacle to true feelings, that true love knows no boundaries and is able to overcome any obstacles. Their example inspired people to be brave, to be ready to follow their hearts and be true to their feelings, despite all the difficulties and trials. Together they began a new chapter of their lives, full of love, support, and mutual respect. They realized that their relationship is not just a story of two people, but something more that can inspire and support others. They continued to build their lives on the basis of the values they considered important: love, understanding, respect, and willingness to support each other in any situation. Gradually, they began to plan their first big trips. They decided to start with a trip to Africa, so that Amina could show Ivan her homeland, introduce him to its culture and traditions. They discussed which places they would like to visit, what to see, and what to learn. This journey has become for them a symbol of their joint growth and desire to learn and develop together. Then they planned a trip to Europe to see ancient castles, museums, and cities, to get acquainted with the history and culture of other countries. They wanted to learn new things and bring something from each trip that could enrich their common life and make their home even warmer and more cozy. They also started discussing the possibility of expanding the family. They knew they wanted children and began to prepare for this important stage in their lives. They discussed what values they want to pass on to their children, how they will be raised, and what opportunities they will be given. Ivan and Amina wanted their children to grow up in an atmosphere of love and respect, to learn to understand and appreciate different cultures and traditions. Their plans for the future became not only dreams, but also concrete steps that they were going to take. They were full of enthusiasm and self-confidence, knowing that together they could overcome any difficulties and achieve all their goals. They were ready to work on their relationship, support each other, and move forward despite all the obstacles and challenges. Ivan and Amina realized that their common life is not just living together, but also a real job that requires effort, patience, and love. They have learned to appreciate every moment spent together, every achievement, and every new step towards their dreams. They knew that their future depended on themselves, and they were ready to build it day by day, step by step, together. Over time, Ivan and Amina became more and more aware of the importance of their relationship. Their love, which initially seemed to be only a personal experience, gradually revealed its true value, turning out to be a powerful example for others. They noticed that their story is not just the story of two people who decided to be together, despite all the difficulties, but also an inspiration for many others who face similar challenges in their lives. Gradually, they began to feel that their love served as something more than just personal happiness. They saw how people around them changed under the influence of their example. Friends and neighbors who might previously have been skeptical or uncomprehending began to show interest and respect. Their questions became more sincere, and their looks became warmer. In the town where they lived, they began to talk not only about the strangeness of their union, but also about its depth, sincerity, and steadfastness. Ivan and Amina began to realize that their story is not just about love between two people of different ages and cultures, but also about the courage to be themselves, about the strength of the spirit, and the ability to see beyond the generally accepted norms. They saw how their example helped other people to overcome prejudice and find the strength to follow their hearts. This realization became a new stage in their relationship for them. They realized that they had to share their story with others in order to inspire people to be brave and open in love. Their home gradually became a place where people came for support and understanding. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard about their story came to them to talk, ask questions, and get advice. Ivan and Amina willingly shared their experiences, telling how they managed to overcome difficulties and doubts, how they learned to trust each other and support each other in the most difficult situations. Their words were full of sincerity and warmth, and people felt it, finding a place in their home where they would always be listened to and understood. Ivan and Amina began to participate in the life of the community more actively. They realized that their story could be a source of strength and inspiration for others, and decided to use it to help people be more open and bold in their feelings. They began speaking at local events, talking about their experiences, sharing thoughts about what true love means and how important it is to be honest with yourself and your feelings. At these events, they talked about how important it is not to be afraid to be yourself, even if it goes against the expectations of society. They talked about how they coped with criticism and condemnation, how they learned to accept each other for who they are, and how important it is to support and respect your partner. Their words resonated with many listeners, and soon they were invited to various forums and seminars where they could share their experiences and inspire others. Ivan and Amina became mentors for many couples who faced similar difficulties. They held meetings and conversations, helping people find ways to mutual understanding and harmony in relationships. They shared their methods of overcoming conflicts, talked about how important it is to be able to listen and hear each other, how to build trust and mutual respect. These meetings became very popular, and their house was always full of people who were looking for advice and support. Gradually, their influence in the community began to grow. People saw that Ivan and Amina not only talk about love and understanding, but also live it every day. They became an example of how to build strong and harmonious relationships, despite all the obstacles and difficulties. Their story has become a symbol of the fact that true love is able to overcome any obstacles and change lives for the better. They also began to participate in charitable and community initiatives aimed at supporting families and strengthening family values. Ivan and Amina believed that their experience could help others and sought to do everything possible to support those in need of help and understanding. They organized events where families could discuss their problems, find support and inspiration for further development. Over time, their home became not just a place where they lived, but also a kind of center for those who sought understanding and support. People came here not only for advice, but also just to be in the atmosphere of love and harmony that Ivan and Amina created around themselves. They opened the doors of their home to everyone who needed companionship and warmth, and it became an important part of their lives for them. Ivan and Amina began to realize that their story was of great importance to others. They saw how their example inspires people to be more courageous and honest in their feelings, how it helps them find the strength to find out prejudice and stereotypes. They felt that their love was more than just personal happiness, it was a force that could change the world around them. They began writing articles and notes for local newspapers and magazines, sharing their thoughts on love, relationships, and life. Their stories quickly became popular, and many readers found answers to their questions, support and inspiration in them. Ivan and Amina were glad that their experience could be useful to others, that they could share their wisdom and help people find their place in the world. Their love has become an example for many, showing that real feelings can overcome any obstacles and difficulties. They proved that love is not just emotions, but also work, effort, and a willingness to be honest and open. They showed that true love requires courage and determination to go your own way, despite all obstacles and challenges. Ivan and Amina continued to live their lives, enjoying every moment and enjoying every day spent together. They knew that their path would not always be easy, but they were sure of one thing: together they would be able to overcome any difficulties and find their happiness, despite all the obstacles and challenges. Their story has become an example of how love and understanding can change the world for the better, how they can become a source of strength and inspiration for everyone who is ready to follow their heart. Over time, Ivan and Amina became famous not only in their town, but also outside it. They began to be invited to various conferences and seminars on family and relationship issues. They gladly accepted these invitations, seeing them as an opportunity to share their experiences and inspire others. They performed in front of different audiences, talking about their journey, how they overcame difficulties and found the strength to move on. At these meetings, they saw how their story touched people's hearts, how their words resonated and helped others. They saw tears in the eyes of the audience, heard words of gratitude, and realized that they were doing something really important. Their story became a source of inspiration for many who were looking for answers to their questions, who wanted to be honest with themselves and their feelings. Ivan and Amina became part of a large movement for sincerity and openness in love. They saw how their example helps people find the strength to fight prejudice and stereotypes, how it inspires them to be brave and honest. They knew that their story was not just about love, but also about the courage to be themselves, about the ability to see beyond conventional norms. They also began to participate in various community initiatives aimed at supporting families and strengthening family values. Ivan and Amina believed that their experience could help others and sought to do everything possible to support those in need of help and understanding. They organized events where families could discuss their problems, find support and inspiration for further development. Over time, their influence in the community began to grow. People saw that Ivan and Amina not only talk about love and understanding, but also live it every day. They became an example of how to build strong and harmonious relationships, despite all the obstacles and difficulties. Their story has become a symbol of the fact that true love is able to overcome any obstacles and change lives for the better. Ivan and Amina continued to live their lives, knowing that their love is the most valuable thing they have. They were ready to work on their relationship, support each other, and move forward despite all the difficulty. They understood that this was the only way to build a real, strong and happy relationship that would withstand all the trials of time. Their story has become an example for many, showing that love is not just feelings but also actions, a willingness to fight for their happiness and defend their values. They prove that true love is able to overcome any obstacles and trials, that it can become a source of strength and inspiration for those who are ready to follow their hearts. Together they began a new chapter of their lives, full of love, support, and mutual respect. They realized that their relationship is not just a story of two people, but something more that can inspire and support others. They continued to build their lives on the basis of the values they considered important: love, understanding, respect, and willingness to support each other in any situation. Ivan and Amina have become an example for many, showing that love is not just feelings but also actions, a willingness to fight for their happiness and defend their values. They proved that true love is able to overcome any obstacles and trials, that it can become a source of strength and inspiration for those who are ready to follow their hearts. Ivan and Amina continued to live their lives, enjoying every moment and enjoying every day spent together. They knew that their path would not always be easy, but they were sure of one thing: together they would be able to overcome any difficulties and find their happiness, despite all the obstacles and challenges.
If you enjoyed this story, I'm certain you'll enjoy the next one showing on your screen right now. Please click on the thumbnail to watch the next story. I'd appreciate your support. Like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. See you in my next story. Bye.